welcome Hoosier fans to a sad episode of the Assembly Call, a lack of offense episode of Assembly Call as your Indiana Hoosiers fall to Rutgers 59-50 on this Wednesday night. Indiana got off to a real tough start, 12-0 as the RAC was all fired up and Rutgers came out. But credit to your Indiana Hoosiers, they fought back, and it took most of the first half to get a 22-21 lead. And then the wheels fell off for a while for the Indiana Hoosiers, and really the defining moment was that last 6.5 minutes of the first half and the start of the second half when Rutgers goes on a 7-0 run. I believe it was total 17-2 run between those two segments. And then the only glimmer of hope, and we'll discuss this, is that Indiana did fight back to bring it back to within 7. They did not allow it to be another Wisconsin or Maryland debacle, and maybe that's just something that you build on in order to try to sneak a road victory out of the Big Ten this season. So I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni, filling in for Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. We will break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's not start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. For me, it's very difficult to have a banner moment when you lose by 9 on the road and your offense just is not there. But I'm going to focus on a couple things tonight. The fact that I thought this was not a good performance, but it was not a good technical performance. Bad passing, bad shooting. It was not necessarily a lot of the casual play, although there was some by some upperclassmen at the end of the first half. I thought this was a more competitive loss, and boy, I might be just digging for some positives for a banner moment there. But coming from 12-0 down at the beginning of the game, you could have just let that one go. To take the lead is going to be my banner moment at 22-21. And maybe a secondary moment, as I mentioned in the opening, is coming back again in the second half and continuing to fight. I think this team lacks some toughness, but showed a little more toughness on the road than they had in the past. And so I'm going to hang my hat on the fact that this team did show a little bit of fight, did play a little bit of defense to keep them in a game, which was very, very tough offensively. Our banner moment tonight, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, a company that was founded by an IU grad and remains based in Indianapolis. Comfortable even after being washed. Unique logos you can't find anywhere, and timely #9Windiana Watch Shot t-shirts. Because you're a member of the Assembly Call audience, you get a massive discount when you order at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code Assembly20 at checkout to get your 20% off of your entire order. That's Assembly20 for 20% off your order. Go to homefieldapparel.com today and get the most unique and comfortable IU apparel anywhere. Okay, now it's time to move the ball and find the open man and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Ryan, your thoughts today on the Indiana Hoosiers struggle in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's a way to put it. I think struggle is a way to put it. Look, whatever Archie Miller is doing right now for road trips, I don't know what the trip itinerary is every time. Usually it's the same wherever you go. It's you leave at a certain time, you get there at a certain time, you check into the hotel, you do a walkthrough or a quick ballroom. You get in the ballroom and you do a walkthrough practice. Then guys go to bed at a certain time, wake up the next day, have this meal, X, Y, Z, whatever. It's usually the same itinerary. Archie, whatever it is, blow it up, change it. I don't care what you do. Do something different. I don't care if you arrive, you fly in an hour before the game, bus directly to the arena and play the game with no rest or anything. I don't care. Do something different because this team can't play on the road. This team came out and got down 12-0, and it looked like we were going to have another Wisconsin game. It looked like they were just going to run out of the building. We've seen this repeatedly, and whatever their approach is, they got to change it. I know I might be joking around here about things, but seriously, just blow it up, change it, do something different. Maybe put your workout that you get in when you're on the road at a different time. Schedule your meals for a different time. Make sure they're in bed earlier than you're scheduling them now, or maybe later. I don't know. Maybe they're over rested. Whatever it is, just change it. It's whatever you're doing is not working, and to act like the maddening thing is when you continue to see the same things over and over and over again. when you're taking the same approach as a coaching staff over and over and over again. Obviously, things need to change and get better. You can't go to the postseason. You can't win a Big Ten. You can't do all of these things if you can't go on the road and be composed. And this team cannot be composed on the road. There'll be sections of good play. And actually tonight there were sections of the game where you were kind of like, all right, maybe they can do this. And then boom, they fell flat on their face again. And it was a 7-minute stretch where nothing happened. And then 5 minutes where they played really well. And it showed that this team, when it's playing well, can compete at this level with anybody. And then they fell flat on their face again. And it's maddening because you see these spurts where this team could actually be pretty good, especially when the defense is locked in and then they start maybe hitting a shot or two or feeding the ball inside like they're supposed to. But then you get these lulls where they just lose complete focus and composure. And honestly, it's a lot of the upperclassmen that are to blame for this, mostly. And it's maddening and insane. And I hear people say, well, when Archie gets rid of these recruits and it's his guys, it'll be different because the guys who are the problem children are these guys and X and Y, Z. It's like, okay, whatever. I don't care. You need, as a coach, to be able to take the guys you have who may not, you're not always going to get your first choice guys. Sorry, you're not. I mean, you're not going to get every recruit you want to get. You're going to miss on guys. And you're going to maybe have to take a guy you were a little questionable about. And then you're going to have to take that guy and turn him into a good player. That's what a coaching staff is supposed to do. It's supposed to develop players both physically and mentally to win games. And if you can't do that, you don't deserve to have your job. And so these guys need to, whatever they're doing as a staff, change what they're doing and work with these guys, because look, this is your roster for the year, and we can't just write off this year. You're in your third year in the program. You've got to take what you get from these guys, whether it's people complaining Devontae Green should sit. He's done, whatever. If Devontae Green is sitting, he's one of your 4 guards. So you're down to a 3-guard rotation. You can't do that. Instead, what you have to do is get as much as you can out of guys who you can't get much out of. So this coaching staff just needs to, again, I don't feel as badly about this loss as I did about Wisconsin or, other road games. What I will say, though, is that this coaching staff needs to figure out why these lulls keep happening, because these lulls are happening even in the wins. And it's changing what could be a dominant win over Ohio State into a struggle. And what should have been a dominant win over Northwestern into one where they were lucky to come away with a victory. And even Archie has said that. And the fact that we're seeing this again and again and again, and it's happened over 3 years now, tells me that something needs to change, and that this coaching staff cannot approach this the same way, regardless of who the players are on the floor. You're supposed to take those guys and make them better, and you're supposed to make the necessary changes that put these guys in a position to win. And whatever they're doing on the road needs to change, and whatever they're doing that's getting them into these situations where they can't play and they can't score, they can't ever throw the ball into the post, it needs to change.
Andy, your thoughts tonight on Indiana Hoosiers' performance in a loss to Rutgers?
There are some games that I feel like the stats don't necessarily tell the story, but this is not one of those games. IU shoots 31% or almost 32%, I guess, from the floor, takes 19 threes, which is about a third of their shots, which is not a great recipe. Only gets to the line 12 times, 6 assists for the game and 16 turnovers. It led to a whole bunch of runouts. I mean, it just was a really poor performance, and you can look up and down the stat sheet, and it's really hard to find bright spots to point out other than the fighting back to get in the game. I think the most frustrating thing about that was that as quickly or as long as it took them to erase the lead that Rutgers had and get one of their own, they gave it back just as quick, and they went on a streak of, I think I charted it at 18 possessions where they scored 2 points over the end of the first half and the beginning of the second. And so many of those possessions ended in turnovers or missed 3-point shots. And the 3-point shots that came tonight were typically not the result of going inside first. There were a lot more of those. The shot clock's running down. Somebody has to shoot. The talk after the Ohio State game about it's fine to take 12 threes. They were in the flow of the offense. You got the ball inside first. A lot of the threes were just more of the, well, this is the only thing that we can do variety. There were some open ones that were missed in the second half for sure. But just a really poor shooting performance, and they weren't able to overcome that. And I think that what to me was the most frustrating was that they worked really hard to weather the storm after coming out really flat. And then, I mean, within a matter of possessions, they had just given away all the momentum that they had. They gave up 8 points on a 3-possession stretch. They had been forcing a bunch of turnovers against Rutgers, but instead IU turned the ball over 3 times in a row, and right around the same time, Rutgers scores 8 points in 3 possessions. They take the lead back. They never give it up, and IU just couldn't respond. Again, you look at, for all the things that went well, you point to all the things that they did well against Ohio State, and really, other than play fairly good defensively, all of those were gone. You weren't getting that upperclassman contribution and consistency that you needed. You had guys really float in and out of the game. It felt like, and it was a night that Trace really struggled with the physicality that Rutgers had. Didn't play a ton, got in a little bit of foul trouble, but really just didn't play a lot down the stretch. And there was, at various points, just no place to turn. But you're now kind of back to the who exactly is this team? Certainly on the road, I think we have a pretty good idea of who they are until they prove otherwise. But it just doesn't feel like a team that can get itself ready to play when the home crowd isn't there and it's not an amped up environment. And so, the most winnable road game you got left on your schedule comes up on Saturday, but I don't know how these guys are going into that game with any level of confidence based on how they've played in the prior road games and really based on how they played today, because I just felt like every time, even in the second half, when they might make a small push, Rutgers had an answer and IU couldn't get any momentum back as they had it. And I think that, as you look through it, just is really disappointing that you didn't have the leadership that you needed to be able to get yourself over the hump in the game. And while the final margin was 9, there's parts of me that say it really wasn't as close as that. And so it's a disappointing performance as you really look across a game. I don't know that IU was expected to win by anyone, but just felt like it was an imminently winnable game. And IU couldn't put itself in a position to be close down the stretch to actually do something about it.
It is always interesting that there are such, the game of basketball is a game of runs, but when you can prevent a run like what happened in the last 6 minutes, you need to, and you need to eliminate how deep the run goes with tough effort and focus. And the thing that bothers me most about this game was that the fight back to 22-21, and then the series of offensive possessions that came up empty with really what I thought were bad decisions in a row. What was the game changer? And yep. I agree with Ryan. It's a coach's job to squeeze out everything you can get with the players that you have, and that's the job. But what's difficult is you don't tell a guard at the top of the key to dribble between your legs lackadaisical, have the ball tipped, and then retrieve it lackadaisical where the other team out-hustles you yep. and gets a layup. There's no way that you coach it. There's no way that you try to coach it out of people. You try.
Agreed.
And then the next possession, a hero ball shot. And then you have your other talent who played well in the second half, Justin Smith, had 3 lackadaisical plays in that same stretch.
I agree.
An air ball, jump hook. He had 2 bad passes, a pass to a post that shouldn't have gotten there. That's not an offensive game plan. And what's really tough for us as Indiana fans is that we are counting heavily on some talented guys that have a lot of up and down in their play. And their up and down is because of their lack of focus and lack of toughness. This game honors toughness. And the team that can play the toughest will win. And that's why I think you see a lot of home wins because yep. it's just more comfortable for teams across the Big Ten. But if you really are tough, you can go on the road and get some wins, and we'll see if you can develop that toughness. And that's why I focused at the start on there were 2 comebacks, and that's better than what was in the first road game. And maybe we could just got to find some incremental improvement in these guys. But Indiana needs all players playing at the top of their level to win on the road in the Big Ten. And tonight, even Rob Finney didn't have a great game. Trace Jackson Davis, another guy we really don't have a problem with, he struggled offensively to score tonight. So it was a collective bad technical performance. I was just glad to see that it wasn't a horrible lack of effort. It was just that stretch of play that I thought mentally really cost Indiana the game.
Well, think about this. If you don't come out flat and go down 12-0, you won the game. I mean, I know obviously that's not how this works, but I'm saying like the rest of the game, you actually beat Rutgers if you don't come out 12-0 to open the game. with that.
Yeah, but isn't
just
that
absolutely?
that happens a lot on the road when the young teams,
It does.
the Rutgers team is all jacked up and you're on the road.
Sure.
So
But they
I
came out-
agree with you, but that
Yeah.
doesn't bother me near as much as that last 6 minutes.
No, I agree, and I agree with your point. I'm just saying it's another run where
Right.
it's flat. It's a lack of focus. It's silly, two silly turnovers. It's a 3-pointer that you could have gotten at any point in the in the offense and stuff like that. I mean, it's it's just the recurring themes. I've got to address shooting because I tweeted something out and I'll repeat it here for the people that didn't see it. It's if you're Archie Miller, Indiana went 2 of 19 from 3-point range tonight, and they had a lot of wide open shots and just missed them. These guys just I think it's at this point, it's a lack of confidence in anything they're doing. I mean, Demezy Anderson shot 4 and he was 0-4, and he's supposed to be a guy who, had a shooting background coming out of high school. Rob Finney was 1 of 6 and he hesitated on about 3 of those. Al Durham hit 1 of 3. And honestly, I thought 2 of his 3 were great shots in the offense that he just 2 of them he missed. But here's the thing: if you're Archie Miller, and obviously this isn't going to change this season. But if you go into the offseason and your team is shooting 30% from 3-point range, is the worst, again, a program worst. They're on pace to hit a program worst amount of percentage of 3-pointers for the 3rd year in a row. It's been worse every year since he's been here. If that's the case and you see that and you look at it, you have to assess yourself objectively as a coach. You know this, coach. You have to step back and leave the emotion out of it and address things when you're a coach as objectively as possible. You step outside yourself. You have to realize you are not developing shooters. Whatever you're doing, these guys are not improving under you. They're getting worse. And whoever you bring into this program, whether you're bringing in shooters or not, are not getting better. And I will say this about, and I mentioned it on Twitter as well. One thing that Tom Crean's staff did was develop shooters. That's the one thing they did where you could put, there was a year, or I think there were 2 years where they didn't shoot well from 3, but they had basically a brand new roster, hadn't had time to work with them and develop them. They took guys who were average to not great shooters and made them good shooters. If you can take a guy from a 25% 3-point shooter and make him a 33, 35% 3-point shooter, how much has your team improved? You take a guy who's a 30% free throw shooter or 3-point shooter, put him to 35 or 37. How good is your team? Then you take a guy who's 35, maybe get him up to 40. You're improving your team overall exponentially because you're getting extra points every possession that you knock a shot down. Archie Miller and this staff have not done that. They have not done that. They have not developed shooters. Guys are not getting better. There's a few guys whose individual percentages have gone up, but as a team, they're sitting where they've sat the 3 years he's been here, and they're getting worse. If that's the case, and you're going into this offseason, and I don't think these guys are miraculously all of a sudden going to start knocking down a ton of threes and getting better. So this is going to be a bad year from 3-point range. If you notice that, and you're heading into the offseason, and there are no inklings that Archie Miller's not going to be back next year as the head coach. If you're going into next year, and this is the way they perform, and you're on the hot seat, kind of, for not performing to the level that Indiana fans expect, you need to go out and find an assistant who is known and break the bank to bring in a guy who is known for developing shooters. I don't care who it is or where he's from or whatever. You find the best guy at that. If he's not available, you find the second best guy. You find the third best guy, and you throw money at them and you say, come in and teach these guys how to shoot. I don't know what drills you're going to run. I don't care. Make them better. That's your job. Because in modern college basketball, you cannot win games hitting 2 of 19 3-pointers. You just can't consistently do that. And this team consistently cannot hit shots in key situations. The momentum swing you get from a 3-pointer on a bad offensive possession where you just happen to find an open shooter is tremendous. He needs to get somebody on that staff who knows how to develop shooters. I don't care if it's a support staff member, a player's dad. I don't care. Somebody needs to come in and develop shooters on this team because it's not happening and it's killing this team.
They're now 301st in the nation in 3-point shooting,
and they're not going to get much better, folks.
Well, and it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is what you saw tonight. So defenses are going to just pack it in, dare guys to shoot. The space to get the ball inside is limited, even though you missed opportunities to do that. You saw, a lot of the second half shots were wide open. I mean, if you're Demezy Anderson,
Agreed.
you've got to make one of those shots. Now, I'm not sure that you need to come in firing cold off the bench after not having played in a game in a week, but at some point, I mean, guys are getting wide open shots, and then you really saw it. Like Rob was the one to me that you could tell kind of mentally. He was short on one, then he was long on the next one. You can see him shooting the ball differently after he, based on the prior miss. Now he did hit one there toward the end, but like I said, the quality of the 3-point shots that they took too many in a game like this, but the quality of the 3-point shots that they took was far and away different from the quality of the shots they got against Ohio State, and just in terms of the offense they ran to get them. But you're going to see more of the same. So you've got guys that aren't confident, that are in some cases hesitant to pull the trigger. Archie mentioned, I guess, with Fish after the game, he felt guys were rushing the threes. Like, that's not going to get better as you're as you go 2 of 19. So I think you're right that something needs to get done about it. What I don't know is what you do about it in the short term, because I mean, the book is written on how to defend this team,
and it's not difficult to figure out. You watch 5 minutes of game time, you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
And I'll go back to what Andy's saying. It's a mental thing. It's a toughness team. This team lacks toughness, and I would say you need to bring in a toughness coach more than a shooting coach, because I'm sure they're working on shooting.
Gonna disagree with
those things. They need, it's mental.
New shooting drills. They need new whatever.
I disagree with you.
Again,
every coach runs shooting drills. Every coach does that.
But
we had a game where we went 2 for 18. Well, it might not be working, so yeah, change things up. But it's not as simple as just bringing in a shot doctor. You're angling for a job.
Yes, I mean that's the simple solution.
All right, hey,
so,
we got to take a break.
One more thing before we go to break. I just want to say, because people in the chat are saying something about recruiting the right players. It's not just about recruiting. Recruiting is very important, but the other thing that is as important is player development. You can get the greatest players in the world on campus. If you don't make them better, you're not going to win games.
But I think their career percentages are higher, so they have been getting better. And after the break, we'll continue to discuss this. Coming up, here we go. Coming up, as we continue our breakdown of this tough loss to Rutgers, 59-50, I will try to point out some meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most statistical notes from this game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hi, this is James Blackman Jr. I never miss an open three, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Brian Tonsoni here with Ryan and Andy as we are breaking down Indiana's loss to Rutgers this evening. It's time for today's meaningful moment that you might have missed. There's a lot of moments. We've talked about the stretch at the end. That was a meaningful negative moment. I'm going to talk about right before that from a coaching perspective when there was an intentional foul, flagrant one foul, and Al Durham was going to the free throw line. But before that, while they were looking at the monitor, Archie had a chance to come into timeout. And out of that timeout, they ran some actions that were different to try to free up the post from what Rutgers was doing. And I like to see those kinds of in-game adjustments. It's been widely discussed whether Archie makes them enough or not. And I thought the ball went inside. They ran a slice cut up the lane, set a diagonal screen, and got some action. And as we were talking before the show, the ball needs to go into the post. It took 7 minutes to get the first post touch of the game, and that's just not acceptable. So if the players aren't forcing the ball in there, then it's up to the coach to try to make adjustments to get that in. And I thought tonight he attempted to do that, and then eventually Indiana did take the 22-21 run. So for me, I thought there were multiple ways of trying to get the ball in, but Joey was the only one who was successful with the ball down low. They did make another adjustment later to put Justin Smith with his back to the basket, which I think I'd like to see more. to force him to be aggressive, and he was able to get going in the second half with that adjustment. So for me, that's a meaningful moment that that was maybe a little positive tonight.
I think you mentioned Justin in the post, and I do think you're right. What I would like to see in each of the last couple of games, he's had a nice drop step move to the baseline as opposed to shooting those jump hooks that have had limited success over that same series of games. Like, I would like to see him do more of that. He seems to be more confident there. It's a more powerful move and allows him to really, put his body into somebody and then elevate in a way that I think is different than what happens with those jump hooks, because those have not been an effective shot, right or wrong. I think there are shots that, and you guys mentioned this on the show on Saturday, that's a shot he should be able to make based on his leaping ability and those kinds of things. But I don't mind getting him in the post, but I'd like to see more of that, the drop step and things he's doing there, which I think have been less used, but more effective for him in the post. And the other thing in terms of getting the ball inside, they really came out, tried to get Trace involved. He missed a couple shots early in the second half. You could tell they came out again with that focus to try to get the ball inside, but they do that and then they're unsuccessful. And then you've got a missed 3-pointer and a turnover and another missed jumper and another turnover. You don't get it. You finally get a bucket when you go inside. And, Alex at Inside the Hall tweeted something out that IU is 4 for 36 on shots that weren't considered layups. Now, some of that's subjective in terms of what's a layup, because I honestly can remember three of the 4 shots. One of them was that turnaround by Bronk at the foul line in the first half, and the other 2 are the 3-pointers. I honestly can't remember the other one that, to me, it had to be at least relatively close to the basket, even if it wasn't there. But we talk about spacing. You're not going to get any spacing when you can't make anything outside the lane. You've got to be able to make some of those. They ran some actions to get guys curling off at the elbow, missed every shot that they did when they ran those. But I thought got a couple decent shots out of it. But bottom line is, to this point, if you can't shoot it any better than that, your spacing just goes to hell, and everything gets so bogged down that you've got to finally make some shots to bring the other team, pull the other team away from the basket a little bit.
This team's offensively challenged, and then you have lineup construction issues too, because 2 of your better players are Trace Jackson Davis and Joey Bronk, and you want to play them. And then Justin Smith is a good defender, and when he does play engaged basketball, he really adds something. But that's 3 non-3-point shooters there to go back to the shooting thing. And so now you have Rob and Devontae and L as the only guys who can shoot, and then defenses do adjust to that and makes it a little bit tougher. But you can't miss, going back to the shooting from the first segment, you can't miss horse shots if you're a college player. I mean, and those are horse shots, are those that are wide open threes. As Andy mentioned, there were a lot of them when the defense packs in the post, regardless of what you're running. They were 1 or 2 steps off the perimeters all night long, just daring the shots. That makes it difficult to get into the post.
And what you said before the break was interesting, Coach, because you said some of the guys' percentages are better this year. As a team, they're not, though. And remember, some of those shots, some of those guys are still living off of early season performances. Since Big Ten play has started, how's the shooting been? I mean,
I would say that's more of a structure than you've got to get the guys not shooting to not shoot and get the shots others. So if you want to be critical of the coach, that's not a shot doctor issue. That might be an offensive coordinator.
Fair. It can be both, though, and that it can be both. And it's. I think that a guy like Al Durham, when he comes off 2 screens and steps into a 3, I feel okay about that. Devontae Green, when he catches a post feed that's kicked back out and he steps into a 3, okay, I'll take that shot. Rob Finney gets a reversal or a kick out like he did against Ohio State. I'm fine with that. Other than that, who on this team do you feel comfortable shooting a 3? I think, as we've mentioned, Jared and I have both said, I think Jerome Hunter's form is fine. I think he's mentally, from sitting out a year of basketball, and Archie Miller talked about this in his coach's show this week. He's like, he basically didn't practice or work out last year. So he's relearning basketball. He's got everything about Jerome. You look at it, you say, that's a basketball player. The problem is when he actually gets moving and gets playing, you can tell he's out of practice, and his shot, he's releasing it too early sometimes, too late other times. Not enough jump, too much jump. I mean, he's just doesn't have it dialed in yet, but he has the structure of a good shooter. So I feel like I want him to keep shooting because I hope eventually he gets it and gets that confidence. Other than that, there's nobody on this team where I'm like, oh yeah, take a shot. Demezy Anderson, I'm sorry. I know he made, that was his whole thing in high school. He made shots. He scored off. He was an offensive guy, scored points, whatever. I just don't feel comfortable with him shooting the ball. Justin Smith, I don't feel comfortable with you shooting the three. And that's the problem is you don't even feel a threat from half the roster. It's at some point, these guys should each year to year be improving a little bit at that, whether it's 5%, feel that they're getting a little bit better, looking a little more competent. Their form looks a little tighter. Their release points look a little better. I mean, if you just develop it, it just feels like there's so much.
I'm always going to disagree with you because I think Devontae Green can shoot the basketball, but he was 1 for 6. So what in his shot needs improving? What about his form needs improving?
A lot of times he doesn't step in. A lot of times he just throws it up. And one of the things he does with his hand is the hand comes off the ball way too soon in his shot, and he comes way too short. That is a form.
That's
thing
him hero shooting. That's when he takes hero shots.
Right.
But so I'm just saying that's hard to develop it. That's
even if he
player has to make a better choice.
He can have. I agree. I completely agree with you that there's.
All right. We're never going to agree.
I do want
to go to Andy.
Can be true.
Andy needs to talk here.
I do want to circle back to something that Coach said. So the lineup construction piece is ultimately why the guards are the make or break for this team. Because if you want to play the guys that you think are the best players, you have to get good performances out of those few guys. They're the only guys, to your point, that can space the floor. And tonight the four guards were combined 5 out of 25 from the floor, 2 of 12 from 3. They had, I think, 3 assists among the 4 guys and 6-8 turnovers. I mean, you're not going to win. You're not going to win basketball games because none of the front court players are so dominant that they can offset that. Those are some of your better players, but they're not dominant. Like you cannot win with guard play like that. And it's not just the shooting. I mean, the shooting is an issue, but 3 assists compared to 8 turnovers just isn't getting it done. People being hesitant to throw the ball into the post is not getting it done. Not taking care of the ball and just playing open court situations. I mean, there were mistakes being made. I went to my daughter's 7th grade game today. There was a lot of turnovers in that game, let me tell you. But some of the ones in the IU game were just as egregious for guys that are, way, way older and are just silly plays that led to easy baskets for their team. It was the pick 6 type live ball turnovers that just murder you with the one that Durham made toward the end of the half, the one that Devontae made at the end of the half. And I think the same thing happened at the beginning of the second half. To me, this team will go as far as those guards can take it. They played really well against Ohio State. They played really poorly tonight. And if you wanted to boil it down to any one thing, like that's it. Everything else was not great, but probably good enough to get you a win against a team like Rutgers that is super tough and super physical, but not offensively gifted at all. And IU's defense showed that. They forced a lot of turnovers. They did some pretty good things defensively, and they held somebody to 59 points. We said that before we came on. It's like you hold somebody to 59 points in a Big Ten game, you should be able to win.
Absolutely, you should win.
And so that's what gets difficult. It's a lot of pressure on the guards, and I understand that. And you've got guys who are coming back from physical things. You've got, it's kind of a mixed bag. You got Rob coming back physically, not himself. You got Devontae, who you have no idea what the hell you're going to get from him on a night in and night out basis. You got Armand, who's a freshman who fits a little bit into that category, although for different reasons. And then you've got Al, who is kind of trying to wear a lot of different hats, which doesn't really suit him well in terms of, is he the primary ball handler? Is he the off guard? Is he, some kind of combo guard? And it just, that's what it boils down to for me. There's another moment I want to hit, but if you guys want to jump in on the backcourt, you can.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other thing that I would say, I guess this isn't it was a series of moments, really. I mean, we talked about the book being out on how to defend IU, which is it's not a lengthy book. But I would say the same thing is getting out there on defense as well. I mean, Rutgers early in the game, I think the first 2 possessions, they slipped guys off of a ball screen and got one of the shots they missed. The other one, they got right to the bucket. IU's really getting taken advantage of on the way that they're hedging. Justin Smith, the one facial that Geo Baker threw down. I mean, Justin Smith can't leave a huge gap where the guy turns the corner on the screen and there's nobody there, and he's so far up the court that you can't shut the guy down. You got to at least route him into the sideline the way they're going to do that. I mean, they're going to have to make some changes there, but they gave up a ton of points on things like that. Bronk gave up one toward the end on that too. They're just getting so far out, and teams are seeing it. They're not even setting the screen. They're just slipping guys right to the bucket, and then you're putting Finney in help every time against the guy who's 6'10", which is an equally poor recipe for success on that end of the floor.
They did adjust at halftime because the first two side ball screens, Joey did not go out and hedge. He played the slip. But late in the game, it looked like the IU guys forgot that.
I think they just, I feel like they just reverted to what they were doing.
Or it was a change back to doing it because it was late and you had to try to make a steal or something. So maybe there's adjustment there. But, the first half was the slip was killing them. And then I thought they did a
How many
nice job
lobs
start
did
to
Rutgers wind up getting? Like, they had like 6 lobs. Just easy lobs.
Well, there was the one, the best screen that Rutgers set on the possession was Justin Smith screening off Rob Finney. Yeah. But yeah, they had they had a few of those.
Let's spend the rest of this time. We've talked about stats and meaningful moments, kind of combine both segments here. But let's talk about Joey Bronk. There was a play where he got blocked twice and he stuck with it. He finally scores, and it was a double-digit deficit at that time, but he still was playing tough. He seals the lane, and Rob drives in, misses a layup, but that would have cut it even more. Bronk has just really impressed me lately, and early in the year I was really down on him.
So was I.
He still struggles, like Andy said, in some post ball screen coverages and that, but he single-handedly defended at Ohio State at a level to help win, and I'm just proud that he's a part of the Indiana program, and that might be a positive tonight again of his play of just laying it on the line tonight. Your guys' thoughts on Joey Bronk's play?
Yeah, I thought Joey was the one guy out there the whole time playing smart and playing right. I mean, he'll make a mistake here and there, and he'll leave his guy a little bit too long on one of those hedges, but 10 points, 10 rebounds, that guy gave all-out effort all game. He was fighting, and then you saw him kept trying to pump his teammates up, all that stuff. Joey is a guy who early in the year I thought, man, he's so slow defensively, and they're having him guard so far from the rim, and it's a lack of awareness, because he was holding. We talked about this off the air, Coach. He was holding that edge when he would hedge off the screen. He was holding it for so long, and then his guy would be open, so somebody else would have to rotate to cover the hoop, and then that would lead to an open three, or they wouldn't get to his guy, and it was just throwing the whole defense off. But I think that he's gotten a lot better at that. He's holding that hedge a little bit shorter and getting back to his guy, which takes the stress off the rest of the defense. He was relentless tonight. He played as hard as he possibly could constantly. And I don't care about the numbers for scoring. I don't care the numbers of rebounding. I don't care his free throws, whatever. That guy was giving effort all night. And on the road with this team, that gets you a big gold star. Like that's, because the way this team has performed on the road, it's been huge segments of games where guys were not active. We're not giving any energy. We're not even just, a lot of them seem bored, like they didn't even want to be there, in past road games. And Joey didn't do that tonight. He was all over the floor, and he was, battling all night. And I hats off to him. I thought he played really well.
Yeah, I think like you guys, I was watching some of his early season performances. It made you feel skeptical based on some of the things that you'd heard in the offseason of what he really could mean to this team. But you see it now, and you've seen it really for the last few weeks in particular, that he's a guy, and I would love to get to a point where this doesn't stand out. But there's not a minute when he's out on the court that you question his focus and his desire to actually win the game. There's not those casual moments that seem to swallow up other guys. And Coach, I thought you said it well earlier. I mean, this was a game about toughness. And the one thing about Rutgers, that even when they sucked, was that you knew when you went in and faced them, like it was going to be a street fight. So you knew coming in that physically, from a toughness perspective, that's what scared me the most about IU. It wasn't shooting, wasn't whatever. It was, this is not a good matchup for the mentality that IU has displayed, particularly on the road. I thought IU played tough against Ohio State on Saturday, so I don't want to gloss over that and pretend that game didn't happen. But on the road, winning on the road in these leagues requires a different level of toughness that this team hasn't shown yet. And that's what, to me, coming into the game was what was most fearful. And some of those loose balls that they were getting to was just straight want to, and everything else. I think Bronk is the guy who stands out as the clear exception to that from an IU perspective. And that play that you mentioned where he got a shot blocked, but was really just relentless, speaks well to that. And you've just got to get more guys who you can put into that category with him, in terms of knowing what you can expect on a night in, night out basis from a physicality, from a toughness standpoint. But right now he's one of the only guys checking that box on a regular basis.
To finish up this segment, let me ask you a question about toughness. Rob Finney did not play well tonight. In my mind, though, he's a tough guy, and he's coming off an injury, and he has a little bit longer rope, or it was just a bad game.
Sure.
Are we unfair towards Justin and Devontae and overly fair towards Rob? I mean, I think we call out people when they play bad, but to me, Rob was just technically bad today. He plays the game at a pace that is acceptable to me. Some of the mistakes that the other players make are just so casual. Am I being fair in evaluating Rob in comparison to the others?
I think you are, because we've seen less of Rob, and we've seen Justin and Devontae do this for years. Whereas Rob, we didn't see his whole season last year. He was great, and then he got injured. And this year he's been injured as well. So I think that he has a longer rope because we haven't seen these exact same patterns for such a long time with him. Now, maybe next year, if he comes in fully healthy and starts to do some of this up and down stuff, you get a little frustrated by it. But I also would say that when Finney is, even at 2/3 of his ability, he makes this team a lot better. Whereas I feel like Devontae Green has to be 100% on his game, like he was against Florida State, for this team to really benefit from his from his play. He has to be locked in completely, because even when he's scoring, sometimes he's giving it up on the other end, or he's throwing bad passes, or he's trying to do too much. When he's 100% laser locked in, yeah, this team is way better. But I feel like Rob, even when there were games last year we talked about where he didn't even score very much, where he just made the team exponentially better with his steadiness, his on-ball defense, things like that. And I would also say with Rob that when he doesn't play well offensively, you usually at least get some pretty good defense out of him, which I don't know if that goes the other way with the other two.
Andy, your thoughts on Rob? Is it just a health thing? He looks frustrated to me when he makes mistakes. It looks like it matters to him when he makes mistakes, and it just looks like his are a little bit fatigue oriented.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think what Ryan said is probably true, that it's just there's a little bit, you haven't built up the if you think about the straw that breaks the camel's back, you got fewer on you at this point with Rob than you do with the other two. So I do think it's that. I think everybody's aware, at least on some level, of what he's trying to work through physically. And I think the good thing is that he's been able to play more minutes. I think tonight he got up into the 30s, which is a positive. And hopefully the next step is to be more consistent. I felt like he really, at the beginning of the game, one of the threes he took at the beginning just felt like team needs a spark. I'm going to hope that I got the same magic that I had at the beginning of the Ohio State game, even though it wasn't really off of an interior touch and kick back out to him. But I agree that it really looks like it matters to him. I think that at a certain point, if we don't continue to see some of that improvement over the coming weeks, I think your question or argument about maybe we're being too easy on him is a fair one. But I think for now it probably is. And with, Devontae, it's a game to game thing. And I think more so than that with Justin, it's almost a minute to minute or a half to half thing. I mean, there are times that he really is focused, and I thought he did a lot of good things that he was, but arguably at the same time, the most frustrating guy to watch, because he would settle for shots that he didn't need to. The whatever kind of pull up floater, half hook, whatever that he airballed in the lane was just a indecisive go to the basket. Like that's not your shot. That's a difficult shot for anybody, because it's an in between. It's not a real jumper. It's not a hook. And it's, and then another time he just drives into traffic. He ended up saving the ball and calling timeout later in that. We mentioned the defensive possession toward the end. It just is just from possession to possession, you don't know. And I think in some ways that's why Archie seems to have a little bit longer rope with him than he does with Devontae. I know I was on our text thing saying they need to take him out. And then of course he immediately made a good play and Jared tried to make me feel bad, but I think he
it was
seems
a classic bottoms reverse jinx.
Oh yes, it was great. I should have been tweeting that, or I should have been sending that more. Maybe it would have gotten him over the hump. But yeah, there are times he runs. He ran the floor great. Got a nice and one on a dish from Rob on a play. It's just the inconsistency from play to play with him, where he just relaxes a little bit and guy hits a three on him, or he loses the ball because he's just too casual with the way he's passing. Things like that. And it's frustrating, but he's able to kind of turn it around a little bit quicker within the game. We saw that with the Northwestern game where everybody's like, he needed to sit down. He gets into it with Archie a little bit and he comes back and he is a main key to spark the victory. I think with him, it's a little bit harder to know like minute to minute what you're going to get. I think Devontae becomes it at this point. I think it's pretty quick to see like he's either got it or he doesn't have it. And tonight he didn't have it, fell back into some of the same habits, settled for threes. Just has stretches of play that are incredibly poor, and his playing time dipped a bit as a result.
Inexcusable for a senior captain.
Yeah, I agree with you on Justin. He has shown the capability of changing it around inside a game, and his numbers were okay. And it's just a 40-minute consistency issue with him. So just trying to be fair a little bit and making sure when there's bad play, it's not always just the attitude thing. So coming up on the assembly call, we will hand out our game balls, other lingering storylines, feeding the ball into the post, and a look ahead to Indiana's next opponent. Then it'll be time for last call. That's all next here on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
You're listening live to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for the free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 7,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. You can also text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter. That's IU to 66866. I'm Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we're breaking down Indiana's loss to Rutgers 59-50 on this Wednesday evening. And before we get to our game balls, Ryan has a really good point about post feeds that we were talking about during the game. And Ryan, it's really important where our strength as Indiana fans and the Indiana team is the post. And it took 7 minutes to get the ball into the post, which is way too long. How do you think Indiana needs to go about fixing and making adjustments?
You know, we've talked about this before. I think there are some times, and there were, I would say, on the first 5 possessions, 3 times Trace Jackson Davis flashed wide open on the post. He had a guy on his back. You know, he was guarded, but there was an easy, feed in there. And even if you're not setting him up to score, getting him a touch, letting him maybe back down, work, maybe let the double team come, opens up the offense. I mean, it gets the defense moving. When you look at that, don't throw it and then move it, the defense has an easy job. And they just go back to guarding their own guys. They slide over and man help and they're back to normal. But giving the ball to your best player at the place he's best at on the floor puts pressure and stress on the defense. And Indiana didn't do that. Indiana's guards, I would say, specifically Al and Rob Finney missed some chances, and Justin Smith missed some chances. One of the guys who fed the post constantly was Jerome Hunter. Every time he was in, if he was on the side of a post guy, he threw it in there, or at least looked to. They need to be force feeding that ball. And even if it's not a perfect setup, get it in there, because that's where your offense cooks, is in close to the basket. And if you get the ball there, the defense has to respect that and react. When you have the ball standing around the perimeter, you'll notice that teams, their defenses are standing 5 feet from anyone on the perimeter. Maybe Rob Finney they'll get close to, maybe Al Durham occasionally, maybe Devontae Green, but everybody else, they're 5 feet off of daring you to shoot the ball. That's easy for the defense. They get to relax in that situation. passing the ball back and forth, they take two, since they're so far off the guards, they take 2 steps over, 2 steps back, 2 steps over. You're not putting stress on the defense. Indiana needs to force feed the post. I know sometimes it's not a perfect pass. I would rather give up a steal, throwing it into the post, than take another contested 3-pointer out there.
Then a steal dribbling aimlessly out on the perimeter.
That too. I mean, it force feed the post. At least you're trying to do the right thing.
And this was a telltale sign, Ryan, where you're absolutely correct. Indiana ran the first play tonight, the same that they did against Ohio State. They forced it into TJD against Ohio State, and Rob relocated to the top of the key, kicked out, and hit a 3 with like 2 seconds left on the shot clock. That was
what happened?
Inside out.
Because what happened? Rob's guy, immediately when that ball goes in the
go.
post, he turns to look at the defense. What happens? He relocates. His defender doesn't know where he is. Trace finds him. Easy 3, wide open. Or if your guy turns his head, back cut. Yeah. You're wide open.
Tonight, they didn't force it in there. They gave up too quick on feeding the ball to the post. Same play. Gave up too quick. I don't know. It might have been Rob. I don't know who it was.
Right.
But the ball was reversed to the guard instead of forcing that ball inside. And right away, I'm like, man, that was the same play they ran against Ohio State, but they weren't as patient getting it into the post. And that's where you got to hammer your program to, hey, here's what we want to do, especially on the road. And I'm a big believer in getting the players shots early to get them going, or getting actions going early. Call a special play to get them going. Now, the players got to throw it in there. But I thought that was a play that was designed, and then they got to execute. Andy, thoughts on post feeds before we go to game balls?
To me, a lot of this is all about quickness and making quick decisions. I think that sometimes they're so deliberate,
confident in those decisions,
trying to throw it in, that it becomes it has to be so open that by the time you're waiting for it to be so open, it's not at all. And similarly, when Trace gets it, he's got to make quick moves because everybody's collapsing on him at this point. And he's a quick enough guy to be able to do that, but it just has to be less thought and quicker and just get into something, because he's either got to make a quick move or a quick pass. Because if he starts trying to back somebody down, Joey does that a lot. And some of that's footwork where you'll buy a little time inside. But with Trace, he's really got to make quick moves, quick decisions, even if that's, as you guys said in that Ohio State game, a guy relocates quickly and you kick it out. Like, it's all got to happen quicker, because at this point everything is just collapsing on them in the paint. And if you take a dribble that doesn't get you anywhere, then it's over, because and Rutgers is somewhat uniquely positioned. They've got a couple really big guys that make it hard to shoot.
They didn't
over
double that much,
and are super physical, and they didn't feel like they needed to. But he just can't afford to on the chances that he gets the ball, he can't take too long to make a decision about whatever he's going to do. And that's why that drop step is good for Justin, because it's a quicker move for him. It's not, lining up to try to take this, jump hook where he takes a couple dribbles and then tries to back somebody down and do something else. It's ultimately the same thing. And I don't know if that is.
They were double teaming on the move instead of on the catch. That's what got Trace Jackson.
They weren't running the double straight at him. Yeah. And what I'll say about
after he put it on the ground.
And what I'll say about that move by Indiana is, when you get the ball to Trace, at the very least, he'll make something happen. Whether it's, okay, we'll kick it right back out to the same guy who got it, but the defense has to adjust and they have to move and they have to, and when you throw it down in there, the chances are he's going to get a shot up, and he's a pretty good finisher. He's a pretty darn good finisher, or he's going to get fouled, or he'll at least move the defense around. Very few times you throw it in there and you get absolutely nothing from Trace. I mean, it happens, and there have been stretches in games where he'll miss a couple of bunnies like that. But when the defense is rolling over to him that much, you've also got Joey on the other side to rebound, or Justin Smith, or whoever. Something's going to happen, and they need to start forcing it.
All right, as we're getting close to ending the show, let's go through our game balls real quick. Andy, start with you. Who deserves the game ball for tonight's effort?
I'd give it to Joey. As we talked about, I really thought he was the one guy who consistently gave effort and want to and fight and ended with the double-double. I think Justin's the other guy you considered, but I just felt like he was too up and down over the course of the game, and that Joey was really the guy from an emotional standpoint, from a toughness standpoint, that played at the level that other guys needed to meet, and not the other way around.
Ryan?
Yeah, it's Joey. I just thought he had the best game overall and brought energy the whole 32 minutes he was in there. I just easily would have to go with him.
A double-double, 10 points, 10 rebounds. Joey Bronk, you get our game ball for tonight.
Joey,
Andy?
Oddly enough, Joey was a +1 on the evening. Just
There
all the
you
other
go.
starters were in the negative.
You're
There's some ugly numbers if you want to look at that.
Yeah.
Andy, we have Assembly Call Radio tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about Nebraska, but do you have a little update on IU's next opponent on Saturday?
Yeah, they kind of like everybody else in the Big Ten in general have played better at home. They beat Purdue by 14 at home. They beat Iowa at home. They did lose to this same Rutgers team at home by 17, and they're coming off a couple of road losses at Northwestern and at Ohio State. I watched a decent amount of the first half, at least, of the Ohio State game yesterday, where they were playing. They're doing a lot of the same things to Ohio State that they did against IU. They really spread you out, try to leave the middle of the floor open and cut. They are very limited from a depth perspective. They have a bunch of guys that are playing heavy minutes. So it's a game that if you can find a way to get people in foul trouble, that could help stem the tide, help stem some runs, and do some different things that way. Their 3-point defense has been good, and they have avoided putting people on the line, likely because they're trying not to because of their depth. So this is, I mean, if you look down the schedule, this is the most winnable road game that IU's got left by a pretty wide margin at this point. So it becomes really, really important for IU, but based on what we've seen of them playing on the road, certainly not a situation that you can take for granted. And you would hope that because IU struggled against Nebraska when they played them in Bloomington, and because of some of the other things that Nebraska's been able to do on their home floor in Big Ten play, at least, it shouldn't be hard to get the attention of this team. That nobody on this team should be overlooking anyone right now, quite frankly. But if there's any threat of that, you would hope that that's mitigated by the way that IU played against them initially. So definitely going to be a challenge defensively, just like I said, because the way they spread you out, they take threes, they try to get back on defense and not give you a lot of transition, which is often not a great recipe for IU to score. So that could be a bit of a problem. But I think if they can do a better job of containing Cam Mack, who's their point guard, he had a really good game against IU in the first matchup, as I recall. I think if they can do a little bit better job containing him, maybe Rob, now that he's playing a little bit more, it gets more of that assignment, then I think he's the guy that you really got to try to control from an assist and from a scoring standpoint.
You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 20% off your entire order at homefieldapparel.com with the promo code Assembly20. So if you want a great deal on the most comfortable and unique IU apparel that you'll find anywhere, go to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code Assembly for 20% off your entire order. Okay, guys, it's time for last call. Your thoughts on tonight's game, Ryan?
I'll just reiterate, I don't think you can win in the Big Ten. I don't think you can win in modern college basketball shooting 2 of 19 from 3. Indiana has to get more consistent with their shooting. They just do. And it's got to work inside out.
Really breaking some serious analytical ground with that,
I know.
take. Scorching.
I know. The shooting needs to be better. I'm sorry. And whether that, as I said, is developing guys better, I'm sure people will say recruiting better shooters. I agree. That would be great if we could just point at a great shooter and say, hey, come to Indiana, show up. I think that's big, but I also think that you need to develop players. And I think that they need to work on whatever they're doing for shooting drills is not getting guys prepared for games. And they need to change that up and change something. And I think they also need to change whatever they're doing on the road, because this is a couple of years in a row that those two problems are just rearing their ugly head consistently. And as a result, you're seeing huge lulls offensively. A step in 3-pointer can save a lot of problems on an offense, especially a possession that doesn't go well. If you can knock down a shot, maybe even with a guy guarding you, it can save a bad possession and maybe stop one of those runs. And we just haven't seen that. And IU needs to force the ball inside, get fouled, get to the free throw line. Didn't happen tonight as often as they wanted it to. And I think both things go hand in hand. When you're feeding the ball inside, you're going to get better looks from the outside. We saw it against Ohio State, and you're going to have guys stepping in confidently. So I think those two things go hand in hand, and Indiana's got some problems that it needs to work out. And I think it's on the coaching staff, and obviously it's on the players too, to give consistent effort when they're on the court, but it's on the coaching staff to figure out what the problems are, watch the film, dig into it. They know their team better than we do. Figure out what's wrong and what's causing all of this.
Andy.
Breaking area man believes basketball team needs to make more shots to win.
Hey man, in 1978, you could miss that many. Well, they didn't even have a 3-point line back then, but you could miss that many outside shots and figure out a way to win a game. You can't do it anymore because everyone else could shoot them.
Well, arguing that this team is shooting the ball well, or maybe even has the capacity to shoot the ball well, is not a hill that I intend to die on. So I'm not gonna go down that road.
Yeah.
But for me, it circles back to guard play, and when this team has to find ways to get more consistent play out of these guys. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not getting paid to know what the answer to that question is. But that's going to make or break this team. I think you can cobble together enough production from some combination of the front court players to keep you in most games. And it's the guard play that's either going to push you over the hump or leave you on the losing end of things. And tonight it left IU on the losing end of things. And on Saturday, it really pushed them over the hump. And nobody who's watched this team, it's like you're ticking days off the calendar and you still don't know what you can expect from a whole bunch of guys on this team. And you don't know what you can expect from this team in general. And the closer you get to the end of the season, the more that you feel like you're never going to know the answer to that question, which is not really a comfortable place to be. But that's where it is right now. And to think that based on what we've seen this team do away from home, to think that they're going to show up and do something different even against Nebraska, for me at this point, is kind of a tall ask. So I would like to think that I think the reality is going 1-1 on this 2-game road trip actually would feel pretty good. I don't think you can feel great about how they played for large stretches of the game tonight. But it's a chance to salvage a road win in the conference and maybe build some confidence in yourself that you can play away from home. But I certainly am keeping any confidence in that happening at arm's length at a minimum, because they just haven't given you any reason to think that it's going to be any different. So to me, especially against a team that's perimeter oriented like Nebraska and plays a lot of guards and is going to shoot a lot of threes, the difference in guard play is going to be even more critical in that game. And you'll probably be able to look at the box score afterward and determine how those guys played as to whether or not IU won. And they've got to find a way to get consistent contributions from guys who have been anything but consistent so far this year.
I don't usually disagree with Ryan Phillips, and when I do, it's usually about the shot doctor. No, I think they can technically shoot. I just don't think they're tough enough to shoot in game situations. And yes, I do think that's on the coaching staff as well, Ryan. But everyone out there, stay thirsty, my friends. We'll get another post-game happy winning edition of the Assembly Call. But
that's it. We're done. No more questions.
I guess we're done. And that'll do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall.com. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to longtime listener Bob Thompson, who produced much of the music you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Thursday night, tomorrow night. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
That'll do it.
I did not see many quotes from the postgame from Archie. I tried to.
Did he just do fish and then? Well, he can't.
He did fish, but I mean, inside the hall.
Usually quicker on the road.
Inside the hall's got the video posted, but I didn't really. I don't know how many people were actually there covering the game, to be honest. So that might be part of it. Usually there's a lot of people tweeting stuff out because Dopirak was at Butler Seton Hall.
And I need to get going because I didn't record the first 4 minutes. I got to go steal it off of YouTube and mesh it together for Jared. But you do, as a coach, have to teach that mental toughness to be confident.
I agree with you completely.
And you do have to maybe it's a situation where they're thinking too much. And as a coach, you can say, here's our best player. We're going to feed the ball. We're going to do that. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, should I pass? And you have an open shot. And by then your form is all screwed up.
Of course.
So it could all be on Archie.
If you're not playing instinctively, you're not playing. You're
right.
thinking.
And I don't think some of our kids are playing instinctively, or they're instinctively casual.
Yeah, well, I think,
and that's just my point from a coach. That's so hard to change. You can bark, you can put them on the end line, you can run different stuff. But if that casual play shows up out of nowhere, man, that is a tough fix.
No, and coach, I don't disagree with you on the toughness thing, and I don't disagree with you on the mentally, putting them deciding to take good shots, and that it's also part of the thing on the offense. You got to get the ball inside for the ball to come outside for open looks. We agree on that. I just think that I'm seeing some things from guys where it's the same, guys dropping their elbows on their shots, guys not getting squared up before they shoot and things like that. And some of that is toughness. I agree. But some of that is, working with certain people who can, and it's mostly.
I'd love to see their workouts.
Yeah.
I'd love to see their workouts and how many of that shots they hit in workouts, and does the ball go in, or are they struggling in workouts as well? I'd really like to see that.
Because if it's considerably higher in workouts where they're guarded, when you do things where guys guard and all that stuff, if it's considerably
you should hit 65% of your shots unguarded.
Easy. That's the low end
if
for
you're a college player.
Yeah. What I would say also is that if you, and most of this work has to be done in the off season. I'm not talking about hiring somebody who week to week is developing their shots. No, you get a guy who you work out with all year to develop your form and make sure, oh, hey, you know what? Let's look at the film. You do this on your shot. You lower your elbow, you tip it to the side, you release too late, whatever it is, and get it so that he can spot it with his eye every time you shoot when it's off. And you work with people like that. And
Here's my rule. My rule.
It can't be a coach who only does that, because then you're wasting a coaching spot. They have to have other assets too. But I mean, look, Tim Buckley was great at it. Tim Buckley was great at it under Green.
There's so much, like I had a rule when I was a head coach. No one coaches shooting but me. Because if every coach is walking by a kid shooting shots, then one tells them to have the elbow here, the other tells here, then and then all of a sudden it becomes a mess. And that's what Andy said about, it becomes just who we are, and mentally who we are is correct. These kids have been told they can't shoot. They're not shooting well. This guy tells them to fix this. If that's going on, that
confirmation
needs to be fixed.
bias,
And it needs to be one person consistently breaking down film, watching film, and doing that if they are having mechanical flaws. It's just, to me, a structure issue and a confidence or overthinking.
And I definitely agree there's some of that. I also see with a guy like Demezi, who his shot's always going to be weird and it's always going to be off, but it's so flat. And it's just, he doesn't get it. And the thing is, you can see the guy jump off the floor. On his shot, it's basically a set shot. And he gets millimeters off the floor and gets no lift on it. It gets no arc. It doesn't get any backspin. Like, it's Justin Smith. There's an easy fix to his shot, is that he jumps, waits till he's at his highest point, and then starts releasing it as he's coming down. Some guys do that. They release as they're coming down. And it kills his shot every time, because you never know what it's going to be.
And college and pros have the ability to work on it. We decided sometimes in high school not to break messed up shots, just to groove them.
Yeah, and just get them
in order to break
reps,
a shot, if you break a shot, it's going to get a lot worse for a long time, and you only have them for a year.
I understand
or two.
that.
If they're a junior or senior, you get a sophomore on the JV team, and his shot's messed up. You got to make a decision: do I break it, or do I just groove it, or not let him shoot it?
Well, and try and teach some good habits with that bad shot. Yeah. Perfect example is Jordan Hulls did not have a shot you would teach if you were correct, if you were constructing a shot. He kept the ball way off to the side, and it moved across his body a little bit, but he had figured out, he had dialed in the timing so well on that, and he got good backspin. And when he released, even though it was off here, he released it with a really good, it was so weird. And I remember seeing him as when he was a sophomore. I was covering games for the Columbus Republic, and I remember seeing him as a sophomore, and I watched this, and I'd never heard of him. I'd never seen him play before. I'm watching him play, and I'm thinking, there's no way this kid. And I asked the guy next to me, and Hull's knocked down like 6 threes in the first half. And I looked at the guy next to me who was covering it from the HT, and I was like, how many did he hit last game? He's like 5. And I was like, and the game before that, he's like 7. And I was like, oh, so this is a thing. Like, it's because you look at that shot and you think there's no earthly reason it should go in, but he developed that shot specifically and worked on it and all that. And he got it to a point where it worked for him. But
your point about the step-up 3 is perfect, too, because we don't have a guy that just gets to the rack and draws 2 or 3 guys and then kicks it out to a guy who can just step into
leaning
the 3.
Forward
it's got to be a post feed and a kick out. And the other thing, when you have 2 guys in the post, there's no place to go north-south. And so that's where it's just, it's, to me,
if you go north-south, with 2 guys in the post, if you go north-south, that's asking for a charge. That's asking for somebody to step in and draw a charge.
And so you're absolutely right. The step-in three is a lot better than the pass around the perimeter three or just stand there and launch a three at the end of the shot clock. So that's what I'm saying is it's a lot of that is why you end up with Justin Smith having to take a three at the end of the shot clock. We're not going to make those. If you're counting on Demezy Anderson to come in and light a fire because he only plays 3 minutes, that's more of strategy and format than anything else.
So somebody on Twitter was like, I just saw Andy sitting there while Ryan and Coach are going off, and I'm just seeing it again.
Yeah.
Feel bad.
Sorry,
for a couple minutes. No, you're good. The one thing that's funny about the shooting is, like Archie said with Fish after the game, is like, I felt guys were rushing the 3-point shots. Like, there's no need to rush the 3-point shots. You're not being guarded. It's not like a guy's closing out like super hard on them because they're just sitting there waiting. I mean, that to me is the mental part of it is you got to recognize at that point that there's just there's no reason to rush the shot because you're wide open.
Yeah, no,
I think, good reason. But I mean, Rob to me was the one that you really watched, and how he shot the one before dictated exactly how he was going to shoot the next one.
Yeah,
he left one short, and then he shot the one like over the. I think it hit the backboard first before it did whatever. Yeah. Now he got the one at the end, but there was the one he front rimmed one, and then you could tell he just shot the other one so much harder.
And you should. And that's the thing. That. As a shooter, you should never shoot it the same every time.
Mm-hmm. But you could tell with him one he just put a little extra
I'm gonna
in
shoot
it.
This long, yeah. Well, you get that with Jerome too. Jerome will miss one a little bit to the left, and the next one will be off to the right, and then the next one will be long, and the next one will be short. I mean, he's just so in his own head right now. But you can tell with that form, and I think you'd agree, Coach, when he goes up like a shooter. He just has to. He plays like a basketball player.
He starts backpedaling down the floor like they're all going in though. So that's what I like. That's what I like to see.
When they start to go, they're going to keep going.
Yeah,
the shooting is so much confidence. He's going to get it.
I like the way he plays, man. Like he had that basket tonight where he was underneath the basket, the ball bounced to him. That was because he cut really hard. His guy got left in the dust, and the ball fell in his lap. It was like. That's the kind of things you want to see out of a guy like Jerome, and you're seeing it. It's just he's got to, his offensive game is going to come. I was glad Archie played him 20 minutes tonight when he wasn't doing a whole lot.
I know the high school game's so much 1,000% different than the college game, but we had a dude go off for 28 2 games in a row Friday and Saturday night. Was 8 for 8 guard in the first half. We were running. High flat ball screen 9 times in a row. He was just pulling up at the elbow. Cash.
Nice.
Cash. And we only scored. Here's the problem. We only scored 45 points. He had 28. He had 28 of our 45.
Those Indiana high school games stay low.
And the night before he had 28 of our 54. We won 54-46.
Man, when you start cashing them like that, though. You don't even feel your feet on the ground. That kid.
It's that's what I'm saying. It's so contagious, And we have another kid who was shooting 23%. We had a nice conversation with him. He's a better shooter, and like the last 4 games, he's over 60% from 3. It just came. It just came, and we're afraid it might go again. But it's just But man,
don't say anything. It's like the pitcher in a no-hitter. Yeah. Just don't say anything.
Don't say anything.
Don't even address that he's on the court in practice.
I watch IU games and I see Clank, and then our high school team at least gives me some respite of seeing the ball go in the basket from.
I have a question for you, Coach, and this is a good like AC After Dark thing. What do you think of the no shot clock in Indiana basketball, high school basketball?
I'm a traditionalist, so a lot of questions you'll ask about old rules. I'll like to stick with the old rules. I like the way it is. I am also open to the fact that. The way we guard, I'd like to see a shot clock because we force. This is cocky a little bit. I hope none of our opposing fans are listening, but
bulletin board material coming up right here.
Yeah, here it is.
We guard, and that keeps our points low too because teams take 45, 50, 55 seconds of passing the ball around. Last year we played a 3-2 zone because we had a big guy that had trouble guarding the bounce, and this year we've gone back to man, and we're really playing it as well as we thought we could, but it's long possessions. I mean, we're just keeping people from scoring. So I'm starting to say, give us the shot clock because we want to run.
I think it rewards good defense.
Yeah, and people don't talk about that a lot. They always think it's an offensive thing, and you'll struggle, and you have to take bad shots at the end of the shot clock. Well, that's if the other team's playing good defense.
So
I'm starting to turn a little bit on it. It's a hard thing when you have so many teams in the gyms that we play in to know who's going to run it and run it right, and get it reset and the scoreboards that you need.
I think get used to it.
Yeah,
I mean, here's the thing.
we have guys who can't even
The
start the clock
hometown,
on the
hometown clock operator. You can't.
There's 1 second
But
left
you're
in the
gonna
game,
run
and they
into
have
that.
5 dribbles to get to the lane, and
Yeah.
then they go to the scorebook, and it was good. I mean, you get homered a lot here in Indiana.
So here's I think it was my sophomore year in high school. They instituted a shot clock all through California because they were tired of teams getting a lead with 3 minutes left to go in 4 corners and just run and just killing the clock. Because the only thing you can do then is foul. Really, you can guard, you can trap, whatever, but eventually you're going to end up fouling and putting them on the free throw line. And as you said, I think it doesn't reward good defense. I think it rewards bad offense at times. So they went to a shot clock. We had played with a shot clock though. Club basketball here was not all AAU back then. There were a couple different groups that did it, and one of them had a shot clock. So my team had played with a shot clock for years, and then we'd play high school ball and not have it. And so we were prepared for it. And honestly, it created a lot more good basketball because you do have to run an offense that'll get you a shot in 30 seconds or 35 or whatever it is. And if it doesn't, well, guess what? It didn't get you a shot because the defense played well and your possession's over. And I would watch games in Indiana, and I was just tired of the guys standing just inside the half court mark, just holding the ball, dribbling. And it was just like,
dude,
come on.
I got a great. I need to go. But this story, we were 4-17 in one team I had, playing the number 1 team in the state, 19-0, I think, in a sectional, and we held it. It was old time. It was Hoosiers.
I get it.
People were screaming at me.
Take advantage of the rules while you can. Like
we were down. We were up 5-3 at the end of the first quarter. We were down 11-7 at halftime. We were down 16-11 with 5:30 to go in the third quarter, and I told my kid to hold it. We were going to get to the fourth quarter with a chance to win. We held it for 5:30.
Jeez.
Didn't move. Everyone's yelling at me. Half the crowd's up cheering. It was loud. The other coach is looking at me. We had to play ready because I knew what he would do at the end. We throw it to the high post, hit a corner, and a kid, our worst three-point shooter, buries a 3. We're down 2 to the number 1 team. And then we decided to play, and we got beat 31-20.
Yeah. See what happens when you take the
all that did was just validate your decision. So,
but I got so much street cred because it was a Hall of Fame coach that we were going against. Never talked to me, never shared film with me, and then all of a sudden we'd be at a gym and he'd come over and sit with me. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? So it got me some street cred.
Here's what I'll say about it.
Awesome.
Basketball in Indiana is so good, and high school basketball is so good. I want to see teams run more offense, and I want to see teams play more defense, and I want to see them put stress on the offense to run good off. I get it. It's traditional. I mean, I'm never going to argue against tradition with you. I just remember when I was covering games, and I covered high school games in Indiana for, I want to say 5 years.
They can be ugly.
Yeah, man, it was rough some nights, especially when you get like a Bloomington South versus like Columbus North matchup. You're like, okay, this is going to be fun. And it's like 10-5 at the end of the first quarter. You're like, son of a, because you want to see those teams play each other, not stand around and hold the ball. But if Bloomington South is ranked top 5 in the state, and I think they were ranked number 1 in the state, and they were ranked like top 10 nationally at that point. That was with Jordy and all those guys. And they're playing Columbus North, and it was like, all right, let's see. North had some players. I was like, I want to see this.
And it was slow.
And North was like, well, we're playing a top 10 team in the nation. We're going to slow this game down and cut possessions and all that. And it was just like,
I need to send you some of our game film to analyze, Ryan. Our high
that'd be
school
fun.
team.
Do scouting reports on all your guys.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But no, I mean, I get it, and I get it. I just, man, I think that it'd be real easy to institute shot clocks. I think that people will get used to using
Here's
them.
another reason. If you knew the guy I coached for, he's a genius. He is a really good basketball coach. I'd love to work in it for a year with the shot clock and design stuff and what to get in late shot clocks and how to take advantage of defensive players and how to do that, because I think we do really well in that situation. So, yeah, a little old-fashioned and like the old rules and tradition, but I can see your point on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think that anything that leads to more possessions in basketball and getting to see kids actually get to show out their skills and all that. I'm not down for the AAU me crap or whatever, but I do enjoy, putting pressure on the offense to accomplish something in a certain time frame. I think works for me.
So
All right.
That's it for me. What do you
gentlemen.
think?
I
What do you
Let's
think?
wrap it up.
What do you think, Andy?
Oh my god, I think I'm.
Are your
I think
games
I'm
at fast pace at your daughter's games?
Yeah.
Transition
but
offense?
Mostly because there's so many turnovers, but yeah, my third grade team plays at a really fast pace because we like to turn the ball over a lot. So you want to do that quickly so you can get back on defense.
What's the score? What's the typical score in those games?
If you get into the 20s, you're feeling pretty good. It's usually something in the I don't know. There's other games in the league that are like people don't get out of the teens, but we're pretty short, so we'll give up a lot of baskets on like putbacks and stuff like that. So we tend to give up more points, but we usually score in the teens or like low 20s on a good day.
Ever gotten a technical?
No, not yet. I got on a rec game. I don't even know if they're keeping score. I did get the referee did like say something to me, and I was like, I don't even think we're keeping score. I should probably let this go. But you can't just hold people when they're coming off a screen. I mean,
That's right.
Right in front of the referee and not get called for anything. The seventh grade games that my other daughter has, they still tend to be pretty fast paced because most of them like to try to press. So it can be fast paced sometimes to your benefit, sometimes to the negative. But
all right, gentlemen, thank you so much for making this work, and I'll try to get Jared what he needs.
Cool. All right.
Sounds
All
good.
right,
Thank
have a
you.
good night.
All right. We'll chat tomorrow.